Concepts, Values and Wise Advice from the Billy Meier Contacts compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Consciousness/subconscious. See also creation energy. See explained by the Billy Meier Contacts. See also psyche. See also thinking/thoughts. See also reforms.
Ask Its Explanations Part 3.
Our technology has developed so far that, with it, even after centuries, we can still entirely and faithfully reproduce the reality of once obtained impressions and spoken words, and so forth, in every detail and word. So it is therefore not important if you, with my help, only write down everything in 1964. With all of it, it is only important that I listen to every spoken word and can also register your thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, whereby it is all stored in my subconscious. Therefore, tomorrow, when we undertake the trips into the past and partly also into the future, it will be important that I am always near to you so I can register everything in my subconscious.
Ask Its Explanations Part 6.
You know my name and also Askits. Do you know each other then? And has she told you about me?
No, I have as yet never spoken with Askit. My knowledge about you two is of another nature. It is to be found in my power of consciousness, through which I behold the times.
That therefore signifies clairvoyance, so to speak.
In a certain manner you think correctly, because truly it is previewing, a looking out ahead.
In a certain manner? Then it can only be that you are able, through the power of your consciousness, to wander through the ages and can explore them in that way.
That is my knowledge. My teaching which I spread in these lands is not new, and it is well known to the scribes. But they falsify the old teaching of the prophets which was handed down to them and is very learned. But they disdain and falsify it and interpret it to their own advantage. Therefore, they accuse me of lying because I preach against their lies. From the old teaching of the laws of creation and the spirit, they have set up erroneous cults which take freedom of consciousness from the human and drive him into servitude, whereby they can enrich themselves with his possessions.
Contact Report 6.
I am interested in the development of the life, its classification, the spirit and its development, and how it is concerning the so-called rebirth. Note, see also Contact Report 5301-254.
Therefore, concerning this, I can also only explain to you what is known to us and what we assume to be given. On the whole, there are actually only 5 very important points that we exactly know of, while 2 further points are of no certainty yet for us either. This is because they already lead us into the secrets of the creation, which is unapproachable for us too. Nevertheless, I don't want to withhold our assumptions from you. The life from the beginning to the end is divided, as said, into 7 main stages or main periods. These in turn are divided into 7 sub-periods, hence resulting in its entirety. The sub-stages or sub-periods can be compared to grades in school, except that these must not be calculated for 1 year, but for 1 human lifetime. This means that a very specific form of development and a very specific goal of development lie in a sub-stage. Once all 7 sub-stages are passed through, which can take hundreds of thousands of years, then a main period is completed. The spiritual life form is completely genderless because a gender is without exception only characteristic of organic life, which guarantees its reproduction. But organic life, like spiritual life, is subject to the law of rebirth in order to guarantee a development in both forms. Thus, every human life form has to live through 7 distinct main stages or periods, and in each case 7 associated secondary or substages periods. In the case of location-dependent organic life forms, the periodic effects of the seasons are determinative, whereas in the case of spirit-evolutive or spirit-dependent life forms, such as, for example, the human being, the periods are irregular and are often set individually. They therefore do not fall under a very distinct cycle like plants, etc. A rebirth of the spirit-dependent human being after his or her death of the body can therefore already reoccur after fractions of a second, or however only after decades, centuries, millennia, or after hundreds of thousands of years. If a spirit-conditioned life is destroyed prematurely, that is, without it having reached a relative evolutionary goal, then it is to its disadvantage. This is because it cannot fully pass through and complete its sub-period and must repeat, that is to say, complete this period through an intermediate life or during a normal life cycle in order for it to nevertheless achieve the period's goal.
So that means that this life may under certain circumstances have to be lived a second time.
In a sense, yes, at least from the moment a life was forcibly destroyed. Accordingly, the life is naturally then also shorter, because it only has to make up for something missed in order to fulfill the period's goal. The whole thing, however, can be made up during a normal life cycle, as the case may be.
So then one could call it that it would be the hell, a punishment, so to speak?
Sure, because hell in truth means a self-inflicted punishment which must be served, always providing that the life is destroyed, that is to say, ended by oneself. In other words, this means that a sin, a self-caused error, must be made good again. If, however, the life is destroyed by the hand of a third party, then of course one cannot speak of punishment or atonement, etc.
Aha, so then hell and sin in a religious sense are of pure nonsense?
Viewed that way, yes.
So does this then mean that nobody is met with guilt, if he or she makes errors in life, which he or she can make up for in the form that he or she recognizes the error or whatever one wants to call it, no longer making it and takes it in as knowledge, from which then a degree of essence of the wisdom must result?
You are able to astonish me because your interpretation meets the deepest core of the truth. The 7 main stages or main periods each represent one full period with, in turn, their 7-fold subdivisions. You would say that this would be one semester. Therefore, in your sense, this would be called a semester life, during which 7 different subjects have to be completed. I want to explain this to you schematically. 1. Primary life 1. Primary development of the intellect and the consciousness. 2. Primary intellectual and consciousness-based thinking. 3. Primary intellect-based thinking. 4. Primary use of intellect and consciousness power. 5. Primary intellectual actions. 6. Primary willful thinking and acting. 7. Intellectual conduct of the life. Life forms in these stages are designated by already rationality-endowed beings as mentally ill in consciousness, as idiots, etc., whose consciousness and intellect, however, are in reality simply not yet developed in knowledge-based terms new spirit, who has to first form itself through learning and experience, etc. 2. Rationality-based life. 1. Primary development of rationality. 2. Effective realization of the rationality and its use. 3. Primary recognition and acknowledgement of higher influences. 4. Belief in higher influences without having knowledge. 5. Belief in higher powers, deluded belief, fear of evil, veneration of what is good, etc., and so on. Germination time for religions, etc. Present stage of the An-6, primary recognition of the real reality. Stage of average Earth-human knowledge-based development. Research, first spiritual cognitions and their use, spiritual healing, telepathy, etc., etc. 7. Primary development of knowledge and essence of wisdom. 3. Intellect-based life 1. High-level development of the intellect. High technology, second use of spiritual power with first cognitions. Primary procreation of life forms. Present stage of the Comtortiger 2, realization and use of knowledge, truth, and essence of educated earth human wisdom. Slow reduction of belief assumptions. Scientists, etc. 3. First utilization of knowledge and essence of wisdom. Bare recognition and utilization of the laws of nature. Creation of hypertechnology. Second procreation of life forms. 5. Natural use of knowledge and essence of wisdom in recognition of spiritual powers. Further reduction of belief assumptions. 6. Life in the knowledge of the essence of wisdom, truth, and the logic. Present stage of Samana 7, primary recognition of the reality as real absolutum. Few borderline and humanities scholars 4. Real life 1, clear knowledge about the reality as real absolutum. 2. Recognition of the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual essence of wisdom. 3. Utilization of the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual essence of wisdom. 4. Recognition of the reality of the creation and her laws. Your Billy Meier's Ram B. Ive, Life According to the Creational Laws. Clarification of the present stage, which is spirit and the intellect. Recognition of the real task and already tending toward power of the spirit. Total reduction of all belief, the next one assumptions. 6. Deliberate and directed utilization of spiritual and consciousness-based powers. 7. Procreation of first viable life forms. 5. Creational life 1. Procreation and direction of life forms. 2. Creation of machine apparatus-based viable life forms. 3. Development of spiritual and consciousness-based power for the control of material and organic life forms. Present stages of HOT 4, willful control of the life and all its forms and species. Our Amplearen races Kainan 5, stage of recognitions. Recollections of past lives, etc. 6. Essence of wisdom kingship Kumash Sri Mat Aishwish, the second to last highest might knowledge. 7. Recognition of the spiritual peace, the universal love, and the creational harmony. 6. Spiritual life. 1. Acknowledgement and realization of the spiritual peace, the universal love, and the creational harmony. 2. Life in purely spiritual forms. 3. Spiritual creations. 4. Disembodiment of the spirit from organic bodies. 5. First spiritual existence. 6. Final spiritual existence. 7. Transition into the creation. 7. Creation life 1. Twilight sleep over 7 periods eternities. 2. Awakening and beginning of creating in the creation as creation during 7 periods eternities. 3. Creating of life forms. 4. Creating of new spirit 1.1 in the relative absolute fulfillment of the creation. 5. Creation of spiritual greatness in the creation. 6. Relative absolute fulfillment of the creation in the creation. 7. Last attaining of highest absolutely full development of the 7th period eternity. The twilight sleep of the creation outlasts 7 periods eternities, great times, 3 and 11, 40,000 years, amount to 1 period eternity great time. By the twilight sleep of the creation, all life and the entire universe cease to exist. Only after her newly awakening does she begin to create everything anew. During her twilight sleep there is neither space nor time. There is only the nothing, since they lie asleep in the unending womb of the creation and the null time. If there is no creating thought, then there is also no power, no time, and no space. There is only duration in the nameless nothing. But concerning the nameless nothing, don't think too much about it, for it is also a mystery to us, which we cannot solve.
Contact Report 15.
If I have understood you correctly, then you, Semjase, have penetrated into the now often mentioned persons, only into their superficial consciousness, and have grasped their impressions there, whereby you have avoided, however, for explained reasons, to delve into also the deeper consciousness forms, which to my knowledge also anchor directly into the subconscious, where also all those secrets must be stored, which you referred to as the sole property of the individual respective human being. If this is actually so, then I can absolutely understand that you had to fall victim to an erroneous belief. For my part, I find it namely absolutely logical that the superficial consciousness is able to deceive until a fact or a factor is anchored in the depths of the consciousness and in the subconsciousness as knowledge or as pseudo-knowledge. I simply find it illogical that you disregarded this factor. The consciousness is, after all, the actual regulating apparatus of knowledge creation, of the actual thinking process, while the subconscious then embodies the role of the registering computer. If therefore doubts lie in the consciousness, and such thought processes predominate, then this must not necessarily run in conformity with the knowledge or the wishes of the subconscious, in which the spiritual form indeed also lies anchored, even if this only holds true in minimal form in connection with the memory banks.
The greater and higher the consciousness-based abilities namely become, all the more the human being in question puts to use defensive conscious powers against all outside influences.
Contact Report 17.
For many years I have been observing a phenomenon in myself that I cannot clarify with any means. For a very long time I have been trying to find out about my past of former lives, or at least to find out about it in part. I have tried this in many forms, but never really succeeded. In a completely normal state, I came across things that gave me memories of earlier lives. But that was all because I never found certain details. Therefore, I tried on several occasions to attract extraordinarily good hypnotists for this purpose, who would put me back by hypnosis. But even the best of them failed, and did not put me under hypnosis, quite the contrary. My senses became clearer and sharper in just a few fractions of a second. I always felt immediately when they tried to penetrate me, and in a flash something completely inexplicable to me formed in me. With rapid speed, which actually did not need any more time, a defense block was automatically created, which the hypnotists were unable to break through. As a second factor, a counterattack block formed with the same rapid speed, which attacked the hypnotists without me consciously wanting such a thing. If the hypnotists did not immediately let go of me, then they were played along badly. Screaming in pain, they held their heads, waved and curved until they lay on the ground foaming out of their mouths, and finally fell into deepest unconsciousness. Some of them even came close to death in this manner, and owed their survival only to the fact that I tried to live their lives with all the strength of my mind and consciousness. In the same wise, all attempts to penetrate me secretly failed. Also in other experiments without hypnosis, the same phenomena came to light. But how and why these defense and attack blocks are automatically and rapidly built up in me is a mystery to me. So I want to ask you how and why this is, and whether there is a possibility to use hypnosis with me.
I have feared these questions for a long time because I have known them in you for years. I was afraid of them because they were connected with things that I was not allowed to name, because they lead into too deep spiritual and consciousness-based insights, which I suppose you will only find in much later years through your natural development. Your defensive and offensive block against hypnotic forces attempting to penetrate you is created by the wisdom of your consciousness and mind as protection that certain secrets slumbering in you are not recognized and not evaluated, because the knowledge and power of these secrets would be too great and powerful for other people to recognize and evaluate them in a sensible and rational manner.
Contact Report 24.
After the application of the religion, the path of evolution must be followed, which, however, has two meanings. The Earthman knows only one meaning, namely, that evolution means a development and unfolding in the sense that something already existing, which is, however, still in the hidden, must be developed and unfolded, which therefore means that something must ascend from the unconscious or subconscious to the conscious. The second meaning of the term evolution was lost to man long ago, however, namely that something that does not yet exist must be researched, developed, and unfolded. And since this meaning of evolution has been lost to man on Earth, he also lives in the misconception that all evolutionary things already exist in man and only have to be unfolded and developed or released. The consciousness dwelling in the human being, however, has only stored in itself all those things and facts which it learns and collects in the course of its existence in the material body and life. In countless other lives, man must continue to research, seek, and find. He must therefore accumulate further knowledge, insights, and experiences, which are then anchored in him and in the storage banks as ability. Since besides the spirit, after the material death of the body, also the overall consciousness block dwells in the death life, and there it processes and anchors in itself the results achieved in life, this results in the factor called by you subconsciousness. Became human form again. Through a rebirth, the new consciousness, connected with the knowledge and ability of the storage banks via the subconscious, anchors itself in the human being, who slowly evolves through the material consciousness and through new learning and a gathering of knowledge, and transforms everything into a conscious-based ability.
Contact Report 36.
Look here, this apparatus, it's an area analyzer.
If I decipher it correctly, then the time to be seen is Wednesday, the 22nd of October 1975, exactly 11:03 Archers. Is that right?
Laughing, sure, what next?
Hans Jakob reaches for the phone and sets a number. Man, he's on the phone with me. He wants to come to me around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. However, this time varies somewhat.
You decipher and recognize the facts very accurately because exactly your findings are transmitted by the analyzer. Mr. Jacob does not yet know anything about these coming events, for he has not yet become aware of them. But his subconscious already knows what is to come and is now working in this direction. And as you can see, we are able to record these facts through our analyzers and read them. That's the way we oversee and monitor and so get very accurate data about all the things that matter to us. In the same way, I have also learned that our statements regarding your influence on certain events in your own group are questioned. So I did not look to the future, but only used our analyzers for these things and monitored the subconscious of different persons in your group. The subconscious knows very well that death is not a terror, and that everything is only a transition to another life.
Oh, of course. Man, am I daft. Of course, the subconscious knows that exactly, and therefore knows no fear. This can really only lie in the consciousness which is still in bondage to unlogic and unintellect.
Contact Report 38.
In the state of real vision, they are master of many consciousness-based powers, which also slumber in their subconscious. They then apply these subconsciously in such a form that they condense matter through the thirst and hunger feeling and solidify exactly those edible and drinkable things that they experience in their real visions. That's how they eat. It is the same process as it was demonstrated 2,000 years ago by Emmanuel when he fed 250 people on earth. Tradition of 5,000 is wrong. There were only 250, with bread which he multiplied in this manner. The difference lies only in the fact that people with real visionary influence apply their abilities subconsciously, while Emmanuel was able to generate them consciously.
Contact Report 53.
The different levels are also recognizable from the representation, if my earlier explanations are called in to help, whereby it can also be recognized that the Earth human is to be classified into the 6th step of the 2nd level of development. See Contact Report 6. 63, which corresponds to a still lower state, and says that these life forms only slowly advance to the frontiers of the recognizable truth and only attain the most minimal realizations of spiritual values. But this level also reveals that the Earth human is currently living in an evil dichotomy between lies and truth and dismisses everything that corresponds to the truth. They believe themselves to be very logical and infallible, and blaspheme the truth by denying it through unreasonable and unreal explanations and assertions. This is also the level at which the greatest errors of spiritual and consciousness-based concerns are committed, because the life form is torn back and forth between the will to know and research and not yet understanding the truth. Unfortunately, often misled by elements of megalomania, who are still incapable of any logical understanding and thinking, and want to distinguish themselves precisely because they seem to be much more than they are in truth.
Contact Report 54.
Our assessments of the level of consciousness of a life form, which we can carry out, are based on a total grade classification of 700 individual values, which are to be divided into 7 periods of 100 individual values each. The highest value of 700 in our spiral degree evaluation embodies the relatively absolute or the relatively perfect, which can be equated with becoming one with creation. These values are now called after our mathematical terms, but they are already converted into your mathematical terms, giving you a rough clue. Now you have to keep the number 700 as a relative absolute value, but divide it among 7, which gives you 7x 100. Now you have to divide the nominal value 100 again into 7x 7, which according to your mathematics results in 49. This number is responsible and valuable for the individual sub-values or sub-periods that give you the very exact value of the consciousness calculation or its level. The remaining 51 values embody the values of the power of consciousness, so this is also calculable. So the first calculation leads to a maximum of 357 values and the second to 343, whereby the two values added together then express the respective present relative absolute level of consciousness in numerical values. Can you understand that?
I have understood. Only one thing is not clear to me. Can this spiral-shaped calculation also be applied retroactively?
You think illogically.
I do not. My question is based on an assertion by the person concerned. I myself am fully aware that this is not possible, because no spirit reversal formation can take place in any form of plane, but everything is subordinated or classified to a continuous evolution.
I understand, so the question is not yours. It would have been really illogical. No, a retrograde application is not possible. Because if a life form has worked out a spiritual level of consciousness, then this remains its own, because it is not about the material intellectual power of consciousness, but about the spiritual intellectual level of consciousness.
Contact Report 55.
Can you tell me the exact values of colors? Blue 7-1. Truth, love, might, knowledge, deference, creational volition, wisdom, fulfillment, creating power, protection, Razumo 1-3. Belief, irrationality, destruction, veneration, ignorance, resentment, worship, falsehood, vice, confusion, lie, violet 2-7. Belief, charity, demolition, veneration, compassion, transformation, praise, destruction, freedom, worship, falsehood, green 3-5. Concentration, rationality, development of power, consecration, understanding, application of power, healing, knowledge, recognition, truth, wisdom, red, gold 4-6. Peace, dedication, being free, love, healing, becoming, equalization, harmony, transformation, grace, equality, gold, 5-2. Perception, evaluation, judgment, vision assessment, wisdom, interpretation, gathering ability, acquisition, application, white 6-4. Talent, creative, forming, purity, harmony, idea, execution, gemüt, ascension, completion, consciousness, unfeigned. These are the color values, ordered according to the level of consciousness. The values are also valid for the color radiation of each life form, whereby it can be classified very precisely in its values of its level of consciousness. So this would practically be another way of determining the level of consciousness, as you have taught it to me today?
In a sense, yes, but the color values also refer to the life forms that cannot be calculated.
Oh well, then this means an extension in recognition.
That is so.
Contact Report 81.
As you correctly analyzed, those contacts of Mr. Glanzman that you recognized as contacts from the sphere closest to you and next higher to you, the Earth-Human collective subconscious we form, were truly given.
Contact Report 82.
1. Equality 2. Equivalence 3. Understanding 4. Opinion 5. Recognition 6. Cooperation 7. Realization. Overall, these 7 points denote the total value of the material consciousness-based aptitude potential with regard to the fulfillment of tasks. In this sense, the manual activity and the insertion into the connected areas are evaluated as well as the equality and equivalence to the other group members, Hanafi-Gu group members, but also the understanding and comprehension of all values and their recognition and execution find their values in the material conscious and spiritual areas.
Contact Report 83.
For 3 days I tried to get to Mr. Glanzman at about 2 o'clock in the morning to find out what it was all about and why he was so out of line and destroyed his contact. I also succeeded very well in my attempt, at least until I was in his immediate vicinity. But if I say this immediately, it does not mean that I was able to penetrate to his aura, which I strangely did not see as blue radiation, but as violet radiation, which shimmered somewhat blurred through an enormous force field, which I was not able to analyze. Nevertheless, I then tried to penetrate this force field, or to break through it in order to reach the aura currents, after which I could then have drawn up an analysis from it, in order to fathom the state of things in the form of a force intensity analysis, in order then perhaps also to fetch a memory substitute from Mr. Glanzman's subconscious, which could certainly have provided me with information about what had happened with regard to the break-off of contact. However, all this failed me thoroughly, because with the penetration attempt into the force field unknown to me I collided with such a strong resistance block that I was thrown away and lost consciousness for seconds. When I came back to myself, I felt something inside me that threatened to tear me apart. It was lying somewhere in my chest, somewhere in the emotional center, and it hurt like hell. It was strange for me, because in this strong mass everything was unknown to me, and only the feeling of being torn apart from the inside made me almost lose my senses again. I had to fight for about 15 minutes to free myself from this tremendous power, which somehow tried to kill me, it seemed to me. After that I could not fall asleep again, because something kept trying to penetrate me anew. So I woke up my wife, who then gave me the light that would illuminate the room all night long. Only then could I breathe freely again, and the vicious tearing in my chest slowly subsided. Well, I was like slain after all, and something seemed to weigh heavily on me, almost like a lead depression. In order to get to the bottom of these strange things, I tried again in the following 2 nights, but with the same outcome. Only this time I was prepared for it, so I could avoid the senselessness and defend myself against it from the very beginning. But I did not reach any goal with it, because I was neither able to break through the enormous force field nor to analyze it.
And in what form did you make the attempt?
in the form of a radiating space jump.
Are you sure about that?
But of course, because I wanted to avoid being located in the starting point. Because somehow I just had an insecure feeling that warned me of an imminent danger. That is why I did a space jump, which I sheathed in 2 wrong coordinates.
And what were those?
One was New Delhi and the other was Rangoon.
That is very good. So it should be impossible to determine your position if you have also set these coordinates in jumps. But it seems very puzzling to me which processes are involved because such strong forms of power are extremely rare. It can only be a matter of high concentration.
Thus it is agglomerations. That is what I thought, because it seems to me extremely doubtful that Mr. Glanzman is able to generate such powers himself.
Sure, but his subconscious is absolutely capable of mobilizing such powers and retrieving them somewhere in the collective we subconscious, perhaps because it has located a danger somewhere.
Do you mean that it was able to analyze the coordinates of my ego?
No, because when you did not interrupt your self-generated blockade, it would not be possible.
Contact Report 84.
Until then, please do nothing at all, because I could not help you in any manner, because I am not powerful enough to control these forces unknown to me, which must actually be a very high form of concentration of several million units. See previous entry.
Contact Report 85.
A further benefit for you was that you set wrong coordinates, which made a direct attack on you impossible, so you were hit only on a disoriented basis with a back connection of the insane energy to the memory holder. In the case, thus Mr. Glanzman. See previous 2 entries. It was even worse because you cannot eliminate concentrative energy completely by any means.
But now I still do not know how this power or energy fits this man, because I cannot imagine that he can create something so monstrous.
Certainly he cannot do that either, not even in the smallest forms. His subconscious is responsible for this. This is because it impulsively registered a danger from somewhere and acted accordingly. Through the process of breaking off contact, Mr. Glanzman placed himself in an irreparable state of consciousness, which means that he is no longer able to exercise any control over his subconscious in matters of contact. So he, contrary to our earlier assumption, is absolutely unclear about the fact that contact with the other level is completely broken off and does not return. Due to the irreparable state he now feels himself further in the contact area, therefore, he passes on false impulses through his consciousness to his subconscious, which in turn puts false impulses of this kind into his consciousness. If he is no longer able to recognize the truth, consciously I mean, the subconscious is also fed with the same false data, thus it also works wrongly in this direction. This means that his subconscious can only work in this form with regard towards these concerns. Therefore, this forms an auditory imagination, which is stored twice, consciously and subconsciously. But this again leads to the subconscious defending itself against everything that does not correspond to its stored goods. For the subconscious in this moment, only the fact is what is input as food via the consciousness, even if this food is poisoned and wrong. For these reasons, the subconscious reacted in an extremely vicious form when it became aware of a danger from somewhere. Namely, that everything concerning the contacts of Mr. Glanzman was only untruthful, and that the contacts to the other sphere were only of a purely imaginary nature. And it is precisely here that a factor begins to play a role by which those powers were called into mobilization, which attacked you so dangerously that you got into bad trouble. For the man, his subconscious acted absolutely independently and unconsciously in a defensive form which he could not understand. In himself, And thus also in his subconscious as well as in his conscious, he is still deeply connected with religious concerns, which became the decisive factor for the malicious action of the subconscious. When registering the danger that it was known somewhere that contact with the other level was irretrievably interrupted, it regarded this statement as falsehood and acted very quickly. In a short time, it mobilized energies of defense to protect the illusionary things that exist within him, the energy nearest to it being the one which most strongly reveals its presence, the energies of religious faith, for which Mr. Glanzman himself is responsible, though he may deny this externally. But precisely these forces, those of religious belief, are the most powerful that exist on the earth, for they have arisen and exist in false and billion-fold subconscious thought energies of religious believers on the earth. These forces represent a tremendous agglomeration, a gigantic concentrative form, powers that enclose your world like a closed dome and often do evil damage. Connected with them are also tremendous concentrative forms of fluidal powers, which were also emitted by billions of faith-dependent earthlings, and are still being emitted. It is these energies, now united in concentrative form and consequently also interacting, which were called into mobilization by the subconscious of Mr. Glanzman and enclosed him as an impenetrable, protective vibrational and energy armor, which you recklessly tried to break through, which would inevitably have brought you premature death if you had not secured your position through doubly false coordinates. You cannot fight these belief energies and belief fluids, fluidal energies, in such a manner that you could render them ineffective. They are too strong and powerful even for us.
I know that now. I just do not understand that the religions constantly talk about these energies as the forces of darkness, because so much negative is evoked by them, while just and precisely through these religions themselves, these forces of darkness are generated.
They are not the religions.
I know they are in truth the believers and their crazy belief.
Of course, unfortunately, they cannot be helped with all the truth when it is explained to them that through their belief and their belief fluidal energies, they themselves generate those powers which they then call the powers of darkness, or the mights of darkness. Beware of not reaching out to Mr. Glanzman about these things yourself or through third parties during the next 3 weeks. Do not give him any explanations in this regard, and never mention to him during the time mention the fact that his contact with the other level has been hopelessly interrupted and broken off. For if thoughtless remarks are made to the man, then the danger rises to boundlessness that through his subconscious, your position of consciousness is found, and the locality is attacked, which means that you would draw the full damage on you and would certainly not master it, whereby our help could come too late if we are then able to help at all.
Contact Report 89.
During the transmissions and their writing down the contact report conversations, you work in very large parts through your subconscious, which reacts much faster than the consciousness. Through your subconscious, you control the movements of your hand, which is why it can work so fast, much faster than if you first had to confer the necessary commands to your subconscious through your consciousness, which would then give the command functions.
Contact Report 91.
Last Friday, the dog tore up a chicken, and the next day another one. When I wanted to take it away from him in the doghouse, I saw something in his eyes that I once saw with an attacking tiger in East India, namely such a strange yellow fire which flitted in his eyes. This fire in his eyes then let me act as it just happened. I thought thereby of the fact that the animal could perhaps still go after a human being, as it already bit our children in Hinwil at different times, although they actually were guilty for it themselves, because they had probably teased the dog. But since Sunday, I am no longer sure if I really did the right thing, and if I was wrong.
I am also very saddened by the incident, but in the name of Quetzal, I must explain to you that your action was correct. He observed the whole process and therefore analyzed the animal, discovering that it was not sick in any way, but was suffering from periodic confusion that released in it a desire to kill, which is why it tore up the poultry, as you say. Quite logically, you obeyed your subconscious and acted according to its statement what was of correctness, which you could not fathom, however, because you thought about these things with too much emotional emphasis.
Contact Report 92.
Your powers of consciousness are tired to such an extent that it is already dangerous for you. This also affects your nerves and you lose control over them. Primarily, the reason is that you are fully burdened and even overburdened with many problems that cause you hard work. According to Quetzal, you also work on the problems of no less than 11 people to whom you devote yourself at night, conveying health to them or otherwise sending them some impulses of help. Instead of sleeping, you will only fall asleep while doing heavy work with your powers of consciousness.
Contact Report 93.
Now she has heard everything herself because she is sleeping upstairs in the center. Golly, I did not think of that at all. Wait a minute. I will go and have a quick look. She sleeps quite peacefully and apparently did not notice anything and did not hear anything.
Maybe fragments of our conversation will penetrate into her subconscious, but she will not wake up because of it.
Contact Report 96.
You see, Quetzal's headless behavior led me to send my spiritual consciousness on a journey, which I did on the night of 19th to 20th December, Monday to Tuesday, at 2 o'clock in the morning. Isados, you are capable of the spiritual consciousness travel? What do you think would have made me see everything else? Maybe through imaginations and dreams? Isados, I did not know that you were capable of using this power. So I sent my spiritual consciousness to Era and found a rather strange building there, which somehow magically attracted me. There was truly no doubt, and I cannot be deceived, for spiritual consciousness can never be deceived in any form. Isados. Obviously, however, no one expected that you would undertake a spiritual consciousness journey through space and time into our dimension, in the deepest concern, in order to give you clarity.
Contact Report 100.
Partly in a very conscious form, Amata cherished group-destroying thoughts of the aforementioned form when she was in the center meditation center at the times calculated for her. But partly there were powers at work in her, which she only gave off in quite unconscious form, but which were also based on her jealousy, and which developed and released themselves as radiating destruction impulses, in a form of automation in her subconscious.
Contact Report 866 7th Spiritual Teaching Prayer of Nocodemian 1, through the power of my consciousness. With my mind and with my reason alone, I exercise omnipotence over my knowledge, truth, ability, love and truthfulness. 2. My might alone spreads within me, but no other, so that I am always aware of my own thoughts and feelings and unfold and use my knowledge, my wisdom and my ability, and thus lead everything to true love, freedom, harmony and peace within me. 3. The power of my consciousness is a determination for me, so I use it for my own good, for my thoughts and feelings and psyche as well as for my body. 4. Daily I unfold and use my power of consciousness, so that it constantly works in me and lets me meet my ignorance, whereby I nourish my knowledge and wisdom with love, compassion as well as with understanding and reason. 5. Through the power of my consciousness I recognize my own mistakes and correct them and avoid committing new ones, so that none can hinder my development and progress. 6. The power of my consciousness lets me recognize false teachings, wrong ways of thinking and all dangers of faith addiction, as well as of harmful material and worldly things, and avoid them. 7. Through my power of consciousness I am powerful even of my mind and reason. And through the omnipotence of my consciousness I am at all times aware of my power, ability, peace and knowledge, as well as my wisdom, love and harmony, and I control everything.